Hey guys, we're back down in the home theater room, and that's because I finished up a project that was on my list for this winter. Wasn't one of the bigger ones, it was just turning the Raspberry Pi 4 that I have into a DLNA client for my multi-room audio setup. Only took me a couple hours to do it, so I figured today what we'll do is run through some of the hardware that I have for my multi-room audio and walk you through the setup procedure for the DLNA client. So let's get started. So when we were building this house, we ran speaker wire to the rooms where we thought we would like some background music. This includes in the garage, the main living area, the ensuite bathroom, and the back deck. Later we expanded to the main living room in the basement and to the bathroom in the basement. The rationale being is even if we didn't use it, the speaker wire was cheap. And putting it in after the fact would be virtually impossible. So it was really a no-brainer to put it in. In terms of speakers, on the inside of the house, I have a variety of monoprice in-wall speakers. In the garage and in the main living area upstairs, I have the rectangular three-way speakers with the 8-inch woofer. In the two bathrooms, I have the 8-inch circular speakers mounted in the ceiling. And in the main living area downstairs, I have the two-way rectangular speakers with an 8-inch woofer and the ribbon tweeter. They all sound fantastic. If I had to pick a winner, it would probably be the 8-inch with the ribbon tweeter. It's just a little bit better than all the rest, but again, these speakers are incredibly good value. They're all around $100, just over $100 for the pair. They really can't be beat, especially when you're just doing, background music. On the back deck, I have a pair of PSB CS1000s. These are a little bit better speakers, but we got them off a points program that we subscribe to. We're really lucky to get them just at the right time. Again, they are self-enclosed speakers. They're weatherproof. And they sound fantastic out there. They're really clear and have a very, very good range to them. So we're really happy with those speakers. So what's powering all these speakers is what I didn't show you last year when I filmed the home theater tour. It's a monoprice 6-zone 6-channel multi-room amplifier. Again, this is a great value. It comes with 6 wall-mounted controllers, 50 watts per channel. Doesn't sound like enough, and I was a little bit concerned when I originally ordered it, but it's more than enough power to power all the speakers that I have in my setup. So right now it's pretty simple. All I have is an old Technics tuner hooked up to one of the analog inputs, and the Raspberry Pi, you can see up top, is hooked up to the other pair of analog inputs. So this amplifier has a ton of inputs on the back that I have no idea what I'm going to use them for, but right now this setup works very, very well. So here's the controller. Again, 6 of them are included with the package. Simple to turn each zone on and off, turn the volume up, turn the volume down, change your sources to the various inputs that are on the amplifier. You also have basic treble and bass controls. You can also put an IR receiver and retransmitter on the amplifier to change and control the various components that you have attached. Haven't really done that. Again, I only have one tuner and the Raspberry Pi, which I control from my phone. The one tuner is tuned to a radio station that we all like, so we don't really change it very often. And then turning each zone off is as simple as shutting them down. Works really well. Now, prior to having the monoprice amplifier, I originally had the old school volume knobs on the wall. I never really liked that setup. For one, the amplifier was always cranking out power. I know that, when the volume knobs are off, the amplifier isn't supposed to be able to push any power to the speakers. However, when I put my hand on the amplifier, it was warm. and a warm amplifier means there is power going somewhere, so I never really liked that aspect of it. I also always had to come down here to change sources. It didn't matter what I was doing, I never really found a good way to change sources remotely. With the monoprice amplifier, when a zone is off, the amplifier is off. There is no heat coming from it when there's no zones being used. So while there may be a bit of power draw for some electronics that are going on, the bulk of the power is not going to the amplifiers when the zones aren't in use. And changing sources is a breeze, as you just saw. So for the price tag, this amplifier seems to be, again, the best value out there. I've seen a variety of different systems, everything from this setup here to the more expensive, I can't remember what it's called, Control 6, Control 4. I've seen those setups. They're really slick, but again, they are quite pricey. For the $700, $600, I can't really remember exactly what the price is. This represents an incredible value for your money. Now, the whole purpose of setting up the Raspberry Pi as a DLNA client was to be able to stream music from my Plex server, which is a DLNA server, directly to the Raspberry Pi using my phone, and then having the output of the Raspberry Pi into the multi-room amplifier, in which case I could change music from my library wherever I was in my house, as long as I was on the wireless network. Before I was accomplishing this using a QB board. It's one of the original, computers on a single board designs. Worked very well. The problem was I started having some hardware issues with these old boards. I would have to come down and reboot them all the time. The onboard memory would get corrupted. I eventually traced it down to a problem with the power supply with these boards. So this time around, I'm going with a Raspberry Pi. It's the fourth iteration of this hardware, so hopefully all the bugs are ironed out. I don't think I'll be having any problems like I did with the QB boards with their power supply. The other thing I noticed is that the operating system that I was using, the Linux operating system, the repositories weren't working anymore. So again, the Raspberry Pi has a big following in terms of developers, so I'm sure that those repositories will be maintained for a long time. So the plan is to install a headless version of the Raspbian operating system. Just means there's a command line only. I'm using an old 8GB micro SD card, so I want to keep things as small as possible, and I'm not going to need a desktop interface since this is just going to be sitting on top of my my amplifier. I'm going to use the gmrender-resurrect, which is a lightweight renderer specifically designed to be run on the Raspberry Pi. It's a little bit older. It's from, I think the last revision on it was 2014, but it works, there's no problems with it, so yeah, that's what we're going to install. So first things first, let's unpack what I got in my kits. Okay, let's see what we got. I ordered the Raspberry Pis from Canada Kits. I think they're the Canadian distributor. I got one Raspberry Pi 4, that's a 1GB version. Just the plain board. I figured that's the one I'll use for my DLNA client. And then the other one, I got the complete kit with the case, power supply, and a bunch of other stuff. And it's the 4GB version, and that's the one I'll use for the Kodi box. So let's see what we got. Okay, so we've got 2 Raspberry Pis, 1 gig, let's see, open here, looks good. So there's the 1 gig version. The 4 gig version is going to look identical, but again, for the DLNA client, wasn't too worried about getting the complete kit. I can just mount this in a generic plastic box. the DLNA client isn't going to be doing too much processing, so I don't think I'll be mounting any heat sinks to the CPU or anything else. And the 4 gig. Looks identical. Same thing. With the complete kit, so there's the power supply. Comes with a few heat sinks for CPU, RAM, and I believe that chip there. Not sure what that chip is, but it comes with power supplies, case, fan, and the micro HDMI to regular HDMI, as well as a micro SD adapter and a micro SD card. So, looks good. Time to assemble everything and install some OSs. So one thing to note about the Raspberry Pi is I ordered the 4 gig version, which is right here, which I was originally going to, well, still am going to use as a Kodi box. I was going to use the 1 gig version and just use a project box to mount it in. I ended up using the power supply and the case that was originally destined for the 4 gig version. If you're ordering these things, just order the complete kit. The chips on these boards run really hot, so it's a good idea to get the heat sinks. It's a good idea to get the case with the built-in fan. Again, these chips do run pretty hot to the touch when they're just sitting idle, so when they're under full load or a little bit of load, they're really going to be cooking. So you might as well get the case that goes along with it. The power supply, I was going to use just a generic, USB power supply. The problem is these boards draw 3 amps and it's impossible to find, a phone charger or any other USB power supply that has that kind of capacity. So all in all, order the complete kit. You're better off doing it that way. I have ordered another case and power supply for my Kodi box, so just waiting for that to come in to finish that project. So installing the software was very straightforward. Unlike on the QB boards where I had to go in and edit quite a few scripts to get everything to work right, this worked right out of the gate, right off the bat. I downloaded the Noobs operating system installer. Within a few seconds, the Raspberry Pi picked it up, and I proceeded to install the Raspbian Lite, the command line version. After that was all installed, I had to look up the default password, default username and password on the internet. It wasn't really documented anywhere. And then did a system update. That took about 45 minutes to get all the latest updates for the operating system. After that, followed the instructions on the gmrender-resurrect GitHub page. It's basically a bunch of commands to install all the software necessary to build the renderer. And then after that, I copied over a few scripts to have the renderer start when I loaded up the Raspberry Pi. This is just in case I had to do a reboot or the power went out. I didn't want to have to plug in a keyboard and have to execute some commands to get the renderer to start. So this way it starts right as the Raspberry Pi boots up. And then I had to increase the default volume. So there's a couple commands to go into the alsa mixer and turn the default volume up, and then save that so that the system boots with the increased volume. And then last but not least, I had to force the Raspberry Pi to output the audio to the 3.5 millimeter stereo jack instead of having the output go through the HDMI plug. Okay, I apologize for filming my phone like this, don't really know of a better way. But again, my media library, my Plex media server there, music, it's just by folder, and we'll just add something. Sure, why not? So let's add that to the playlist. And then now, if I select a different source or player, there's the Raspberry Pi as the renderer. If I hit play, there it is out of the multi-room audio amplifier. Works perfectly. Alright guys, so that's the hardware that I use for my multi-room audio setup, and that's my Raspberry Pi now acting as a DLNA client. I should mention the one downside to the monoprice amplifier is the digital input. It has a Toslink connection on the back, which means there's a digital analog converter in it. I noticed that input, that hardware, is very poor. The one time I did use it, I couldn't stand listening to the music. The balance was all off, the volume kept changing for whatever reason. The analog inputs are fantastic, no issue, never had any issues with those, but I would say to avoid that digital input. The analog output on the Raspberry Pi sounds perfectly fine, there's no problem with it at all. I should mention also that I did look for a standalone commercial device that would perform a similar function. I found a bunch of streaming music players, but their price tag was very high. They included a lot of features that I probably would never use. So I settled on the Raspberry Pi, and again, the installation of all this software to get this up and running was very straightforward. So, hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, post them in the comments below, and I'll leave links in the descriptions for all the installation guides and everything I did to get this Raspberry Pi up and running. So, see you next time.